All right, so today we are going to dive into the world of bread.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting one, especially if you're thinking about weight loss, because so often, the first thing people say is like, oh, well, cut out the bread, right?
Right.
And so we're going to kind of unpack that today and
Yeah.
figure out, like, is that really true?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm excited. We have like a bunch of different sources, not just, the kind of general health websites, but like some real deep dives into like specific types of bread.
Yeah, we've got some really fascinating research here. Like, there's one on sprouted grains. Did you know that actually, like, sprouting the grains can change the way the nutrients are available?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready to have my mind blown, I think.
Yeah. And then also we've got a lot on fiber and gut health,
Oh, interesting.
which is a really hot topic right now.
Yeah.
And then even some stuff on, like, ancient grains,
Cool.
So,
Okay, well, I guess let's start with the basics, right? Like when we think about bread and weight loss, the first thing that comes to mind, at least for me, is whole grain.
right.
Like that's what we've always been told, like whole grain's the good one.
Exactly.
But why is that?
Well, one of the biggest reasons is fiber.
Oh, yeah.
So whole grain breads have a lot more fiber than like your typical white bread.
Okay.
And fiber basically acts like a sponge in your digestive system.
Okay.
So it absorbs water, it expands, and that helps you to feel full and satisfied for a longer period of time.
Interesting. So you're not just like, white knuckling it and like, oh, I gotta resist.
Right.
It's like you actually don't feel as hungry.
Exactly. It's not just about willpower, it's about actually feeling satisfied.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So if you're trying to lose weight, having that fiber to keep you full can really help you to eat less overall.
Okay, but I've definitely fallen into the trap of like seeing something that's brown
Yeah.
and assuming that it's whole grain.
Right.
How do we actually make sure that we're getting like the real deal?
Yeah, that's a really common mistake. You really have to read the label carefully. You're not just looking for brown bread, you're looking for that phrase, 100% whole grain.
Okay.
Otherwise, you might be getting some sneaky added sugars or refined flours that are basically going to turn that healthy bread into a sugar bomb.
Okay, so 100% whole grain is what we're looking for.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Now, what about whole wheat?
Okay.
Is that the same as whole grain?
So whole wheat bread is made using the entire wheat kernel,
Okay.
which is great. But whole grain can include other greens, like oats, barley, or rye.
Oh, I see.
So it's kind of like
So whole wheat is like...
whole wheat is like one player on the all-star team of whole grains.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So we're broadening it out a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we've got the whole grain thing down.
Right.
Fiber keeps us full. You mentioned gut health.
Yes.
What's the connection there?
This is where it gets really interesting. So emerging research is showing that fiber isn't just good for digestion. It actually feeds the good bacteria in your gut,
Oh, okay.
which plays a huge role in your overall health, including weight management.
Wait, so hold on. Are you telling me that like the bacteria in my gut can actually like impact
Yes.
how much weight I gain or lose?
It's a relatively new area of research, but the evidence is growing. A healthy gut microbiome can actually help to regulate your metabolism
Wow.
and even influence your hormones that control hunger and satiety.
I had no idea.
So by choosing high-fiber breads, you're not just filling your stomach, you're also feeding your good gut bacteria.
That's crazy.
And that can have a ripple effect on your overall health and weight.
Okay. So that's another point for whole grain. Okay, you mentioned sprouted grains earlier. What's that all about?
This is really cool. So sprouted grains,
Right.
there was a study that found that sprouting grains actually can increase the bioavailability of certain nutrients,
Okay.
meaning your body can absorb and utilize them more effectively.
So what even is a sprouted grain? Like how do you sprout a grain?
So basically, you take the grains and you allow them to germinate or sprout before they're milled into flour.
Okay.
So it's basically like they get a head start on the digestion process.
Oh, interesting.
So this process actually breaks down some of the starches
Okay.
and increases the availability of nutrients like protein, fiber, and certain vitamins.
So it's like pre-digesting.
Exactly.
Okay.
And because sprouting increases the protein content, it can be especially beneficial if you're trying to build and maintain muscle mass,
Okay.
which is key for boosting your metabolism and supporting weight loss.
So it's kind of like a twofer.
Yes.
You're getting more nutrients and you're also helping your body
Yeah.
build muscle.
Exactly.
Okay. What are some examples of sprouted grain breads?
One popular option is Ezekiel bread.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Have you had it?
I don't know if I have, actually.
It's pretty good. It's made from a blend of sprouted grains and legumes. So it's a really good source of complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids.
Okay, so Ezekiel bread got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got like whole wheat sprouted grains. Are there any other players in this like healthy bread game?
There are. We've got oat bread,
Okay.
sourdough, and even flaxseed bread.
Oh, wow. Okay, so slow down a little bit. There's oat bread, sourdough,
Yes.
flaxseed. Tell me about those.
Okay, so oat bread is packed with soluble fiber, which is known for its cholesterol-lowering effects.
Oh, okay.
It also has kind of a heartier texture, which can help you to feel more satisfied.
So it's kind of a double whammy, like good for your heart and good for weight loss.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what about sourdough?
Sourdough's interesting. The tanginess comes from the fermentation process, which also makes it easier to digest than regular bread. So that's a plus. It's generally considered to be a healthier option, although it might not be the best choice for everyone.
Okay.
Especially those with gluten sensitivities.
So it's not like a magical cure-all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And what about flaxseed?
So flaxseed bread is another fiber-rich option that's packed with omega-3 fatty acids,
Okay.
which are known for their anti-inflammatory properties. And since chronic inflammation can actually hinder weight loss, getting more omega-3s can be beneficial.
Interesting. So it's not just about like calories in, calories out.
Right.
There's
a lot of other factors that can come into play.
Okay. So we've got whole grain, whole wheat, sprouted oat, sourdough flaxseed.
What about white bread?
Yeah.
What's the deal with white bread? Like, why is it considered like the enemy of weight loss?
So white bread is made from refined flour,
Okay.
which is basically stripped of its nutrients and fiber.
Okay.
And this means that it has a high glycemic index,
Okay.
which causes your blood sugar to spike quickly,
Yeah.
followed by an energy crash that leaves you feeling hungry and craving more.
Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle that can really sabotage your weight loss efforts. Okay, so white bread's out, but with all these other options, how do we choose? If you had to pick like your top 3 breads for weight loss,
Okay.
what would they be?
Based on the research, I would say Ezekiel bread for its complete protein and low glycemic index. Dave's Killer bread,
Okay.
which has got great flavor and it's a whole grain option.
Mm-hmm.
And then Arnold Whole Grains,
Okay.
which is a widely available and delicious option.
Okay. Cool. Those are good ones.
Yeah.
Now, what if you're someone who needs to eat gluten-free?
Right.
Does that mean like bread is off the table?
Not at all. There are plenty of gluten-free breads out there that can be just as healthy and delicious.
Okay.
Just remember to look for options made with whole grain bases, like brown rice or quinoa,
Okay.
and avoid those sneaky added sugars and refined flours.
So the same rules apply.
Exactly,
Right.
just in the gluten-free world.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this is really helpful. I think I'm starting to wrap my head around like the different types of bread and how they can actually like support my weight loss goals rather than
Right.
sabotage them.
Exactly.
So I'm excited to dive into like even more specifics in our next segment.
Me too.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground in that last segment. I feel like I'm starting to get a better grasp of like the different types of bread
Yeah.
and how they can actually help with weight loss. But before we move on, I wanted to circle back to one thing.
Sure.
What about rye bread?
Oh, yeah.
Where does that fit in?
Rye bread is actually a fantastic option for weight loss.
Really?
Yeah, it's lower on the glycemic index than a lot of other breads,
Yeah.
so it won't spike your blood sugar as much.
So you don't get that like crazy craving afterwards.
Exactly. Plus, it's incredibly dense and packed with fiber,
Oh, okay.
which, as we talked about, is a champion for keeping you full and satisfied. And it even boasts a decent amount of protein.
I didn't realize that about rye bread.
Oh.
Okay, so what kind of meals would you pair rye bread with?
It's pretty versatile. You can pair it beautifully with lean proteins like turkey or chicken. You could create delicious open-faced sandwiches or even enjoy it as a hearty side with a warm bowl of soup.
Yum. Oh, okay. I'm sold on rye bread.
Oh.
Now, we also talked about brown rice bread as a good gluten-free option. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, brown rice bread can be a fantastic choice if you're avoiding gluten. It's made from brown rice flour, which retains more fiber and nutrients compared to white rice flour.
Okay.
However, just like with any bread, it's crucial to read the label carefully.
Right.
You want to choose options made with whole grains and minimal added sugars.
Because just because it says brown rice doesn't mean it's good for you.
Exactly. There are definitely some gluten-free breads lurking out there that are loaded with refined flours and sugars, which defeats the purpose entirely.
Okay, so brown rice bread, good, but read those labels.
Yes, always read the labels.
Okay. Now, are there any other gluten-free grains we should be on the lookout for?
Definitely keep an eye out for quinoa. It's another fantastic gluten-free grain that often finds its way into bread. Quinoa is a complete protein, meaning it contains all 9 essential amino acids, and it's also a good source of both fiber and iron. So if you come across a gluten-free bread made with quinoa, consider giving it a try.
Perfect. Okay, so we've got all these different grains, we've got these different types of bread.
Right.
You also mentioned earlier the baking process.
Yes.
And how that can actually change the nutritional value of the bread.
Exactly. Remember our conversation about sourdough and the benefits of fermentation?
Oh, yeah?
Well, there are other traditional baking methods that can also have a positive impact. Some cultures, for instance, utilize a slow fermentation process that helps break down phytic acid.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what phytic acid is.
So phytic acid is known to interfere with the absorption of certain nutrients.
Oh.
So by breaking it down through slow fermentation, these traditional methods can actually make the nutrients in bread more readily available to your body.
Interesting. So it's not just about the grain itself.
Right.
It's also about how it's prepared.
Exactly. It's like a whole other layer of complexity.
I love that there's all these subtle nuances that can impact how our bodies actually use the food.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. It's very cool. Okay, so we've got the types of grains, we've got the baking techniques. Now, for someone who's just going to the grocery store,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
My top tip would be to stick to the perimeter of the store.
Okay.
That's typically where you'll find the freshest, least processed foods, including bread. Look for a dedicated bakery section or a refrigerated section with fresh breads.
And steer clear of those center aisles.
Exactly.
Okay, good tip. Now, when you are in the bread aisle, though, what should you be looking for?
Remember those keywords we talked about, 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat? And don't be afraid to turn that bread bag around and scrutinize the ingredients list. The shorter and more recognizable the list, the better.
Short and sweet. Okay, so read those labels carefully. Now, before we wrap up this segment, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the microbiome.
Okay.
You said it can influence our weight, but I'm still a little fuzzy on how that works.
That's a great question. It's a relatively new area of research, but scientists are discovering that the trillions of bacteria that live in our gut, collectively known as the microbiome, play a much bigger role in our health than we previously thought.
So it's not just about digestion.
It's about so much more. The microbiome can influence everything from our immune system to our mental health, and yes, even our weight.
Wow.
Research suggests that the types of bacteria that dominate our gut can impact how efficiently we extract energy from food and how we store fat.
So the bacteria in my gut can actually determine whether I gain or lose weight.
It's a complex and fascinating field of study. And while we're still uncovering all the details, it's clear that a healthy microbiome is essential for overall well-being, including maintaining a healthy weight.
So how do we make sure that we're taking care of those good gut bacteria?
That's where diet comes in. A diet rich in fiber, prebiotics, and probiotics can help promote a diverse and thriving microbiome.
So back to bread.
Exactly. Choosing high-fiber breads like those made with whole grains can provide a good source of prebiotic fiber, which acts as food for our beneficial gut bacteria.
It all comes back to bread.
It does.
This is incredible. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this whole microbiome world.
We have, and that's the beauty of it. There's always more to learn and explore.
Okay, so we've covered the types of grains, the baking techniques, and even the microbiome. Now, before we move on to our final segment, is there anything else you want to add about this connection between bread and weight loss?
I think the key takeaway here is that bread doesn't have to be the enemy when it comes to weight loss.
Okay.
In fact, choosing the right types of bread can actually support your goals by keeping you feeling full and satisfied, providing essential nutrients, and even nourishing your gut microbiome.
I love that. It's not about eliminating bread altogether. It's about understanding the different options and making informed choices.
Exactly. And it's about appreciating the diversity and complexity of this seemingly simple food.
Well said. All right. Are you ready to move on to some practical tips and tricks for incorporating these healthy bread options into our diets?
Let's do it.
All right. I am ready for those tips. I have to say, after talking about ancient grains and all that stuff, I'm feeling pretty inspired to step up my bread game.
Yeah,
But I also know that life gets busy and sometimes we just need something quick and easy.
exactly. It's all about balance, right?
Right. So let's talk strategy. Let's start with breakfast.
Okay.
I'm a toast person through and through.
Me too.
But how can we make toast work for weight loss?
Yeah, well, the first step is obviously swapping out that white toast for a whole grain or sprouted option.
Okay.
But don't be afraid to get creative with your toppings, too.
Okay.
Instead of loading up on sugary jams or spreads, try adding some protein and healthy fats to keep you feeling full longer.
Okay, like what?
You could do avocado slices with a sprinkle of salt and pepper,
Okay.
almond butter with a drizzle of honey,
Mm.
or even a poached egg with some wilted spinach.
Ooh, fancy.
It's gourmet toast,
Right.
but it's good for you.
I like it.
Okay.
So toast just got a whole lot more interesting. What about lunch?
Lunch.
Yeah, sandwiches are a classic, but they can be kind of heavy.
Yeah, I agree with that. One trick is to ditch the top slice of bread and create an open-faced sandwich.
Okay.
You still get that sandwichy goodness, but with fewer carbs and calories.
I like that.
Another option is to swap out traditional sandwich bread for lettuce wraps or collard green wraps.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great way to add some extra veggies to your meal and lighten things up.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Okay. What about dinner? I struggle with dinner and bread.
Dinner can be tricky, but there are definitely ways to make it work.
Okay.
One option is to choose a hearty whole grain bread and enjoy a smaller portion as a side dish with a lean protein and plenty of vegetables.
Okay.
Think roasted chicken with a side of quinoa salad and a slice of toasted rye bread. Or if you're craving something a bit more comforting, consider making a super stew and serving it with a small piece of crusty sourdough bread for dipping.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Okay. So it's about being strategic with it.
Exactly. It's not about making bread the center of every meal, but about incorporating it in a way that enhances the overall dining experience.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, what about people with dietary restrictions?
Yeah.
Like gluten intolerance or dairy sensitivities?
Right. For those with gluten intolerance, it's all about exploring the world of gluten-free breads.
Yeah.
Look for options made with whole grain bases like brown rice quinoa or a blend of ancient grains. And again, always read those labels carefully
Always.
to avoid added sugars and refined flours.
Right. Because gluten-free doesn't automatically mean it's healthy.
Exactly. And for those with dairy sensitivities, it's important to be mindful of certain bread recipes that might contain milk or butter.
Okay.
Many bakeries and grocery stores offer dairy-free bread options, or you can experiment with baking your own at home using plant-based milk alternatives and vegan butter substitutes.
Okay. So there are options out there.
There are.
It's just about doing a little research.
A little bit of research goes a long way.
Exactly. Well, I feel like this has been such an eye-opening deep dive into the world of bread.
Me too.
We went from like basic whole grain versus white bread to ancient grains and fermentation and even the microbiome.
It's a whole world.
I know. It's amazing how much there is to learn about something as simple as bread.
And it's all delicious knowledge.
That's the best part,
Right.
right? So it's not about restriction. It's about enjoying bread in a way that's actually good for us.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to rethink your relationship with bread and to make choices that nourish your body and help you achieve your weight loss goals. Until next time, happy bread hunting.